Joe Musso and Emery Hunt in studio, joined by CBS NFL writer Tyler Sullivan. Fellas, to go into Arrowhead and beat the defending champs, I don't care who is inactive, is the exact way these Detroit Lions needed to start a season that was highlighted prior to by so much pomp and circumstance, Emery. To make this statement out of the gate tells you what about the resolve of this team?
That they really buy into what Dan Campbell is selling, because to go into Arrowhead and win this type of game that they were able to win, they had to fight through adversity and did a fantastic job not only playing from behind but also closing out the game. So it goes to tell you that they're buying what Dan Campbell is selling. They're not reading their press clippings of what we've talked about them all throughout the offseason. They went out there and proved it against the reigning Super Bowl champions.
No, Emery's right. I mean, to go into that type of environment, even without, of course, Travis Kelce not there, Chris Jones not there, even still to face that type of adversity and not play a perfect game, mind you. We still had the Patrick Mahomes converting 3rd and 17s and crazy stuff happening at Arrowhead and mental mistakes that they made. Typically, that is a death nail for a team going into Arrowhead. They were able to overcome that. So for this team to buy in, like Emery was saying, into what Dan Campbell was selling, still have mistakes and come out with a win like this, that it presents a huge opportunity for them going down the rest of the way.
And Tyler, this felt like a sample of who these Lions are supposed to be. Do you feel like they felt a little bit of, I don't want to go too big, but season-long identity in the second half as a run-first team? I believe Jared Goff put it in the air 22 times in the first half, far less in the second.
Yeah, I think that's the identity of this team. Look at their head coach. He's a meat and potatoes kind of guy. I mean, the second we saw this guy, he was talking about biting kneecaps. So obviously, he wants to run the football and be a more physical style of a team. And right now, they're still trying to work in some pass catchers. Of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown is a star fantasy and star real-life football player. Let's see what Sam Laporta looks like. He was very encouraging in the passing game here. He's going to be able to be a factor for them. But outside of that, Marvin Jones didn't have a great game. They transitioned to the ground game because of those struggles, I believe, outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I think it proved to be their benefit, especially with David Montgomery towards the tail, and they were able to churn clock and obviously get that go-ahead touchdown.
Yeah, you talk about the offensive line doing a fantastic job and leaning in on that Chiefs defensive front, but how about this defense for the Lions? They held Patrick Mahomes to 5.8 yards of pass attempt. That's basically handing the ball off. He couldn't really push the ball deep down the field. Now, granted, these receivers were dropping everything that was thrown their way, but you have to give credit to that defense, not only making things tough. We talked about this while we were watching this game, Joe, how they were afraid to hit and get after Patrick Mahomes because they didn't want to get beat deep down the field. Well, they didn't get beat deep down the field, and Mahomes was their leading rusher, so they not only did they stop the deep throw, they stopped the run game and forced Mahomes to pick up those cheap yards scrambling. So kudos to what they did defensively. Aaron Glenn did a masterful job against this offense.
Here's a look at some of those numbers. Outgained in terms of total yardage were the Chiefs, who, Emery, as you mentioned, had their issues. I feel like for every compliment we could make of the Lions, an indictment could be made of this Kansas City Chiefs, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. First Week 1 loss of Patrick Mahomes' career in a game that flipped on his first Week 1 interception of his career. It goes back as a pick six, a fantastic play, but Kadarius Toney lets that one go right through his hands. What more can you say about this receiving core? It felt like in multiple moments, Mahomes, when it got hairy, was looking inside and didn't see that safety valve there.
He didn't see that guy he trusted. You're absolutely right. So he went to these younger guys that they're expecting to step up. We saw Rashee Rice get stopped on a 4th and inches on a handoff. Then we see Kadarius Toney drop the football all throughout the game. We saw Sky Moore drop a ball all throughout the game. So it's unfortunate these young guys let him down, but also they let that defense down. I felt like Kansas City's defense did a fantastic job of keeping things at bay for Detroit. Detroit really started to get going when they were closing out the ball game. So the receivers let Mahomes down, and that defense, I felt like, was let down by the entire offense.
Tyler, I get it. No Travis Kelce's always going to be a problem, but these are guys that are going to be expected to make plays throughout the season. Kadarius Toney's, Sky Moore's, other players on this offensive attack. Further concern beyond just Week 1 here for the receiving core?
Absolutely. I thought that this was a fantastic opportunity for Kansas City to find not necessarily a new identity, but after all, Travis Kelce is going to be 34 years old this season. The light is eventually going to run dim on his talent. It probably is not going to be this season, but at some point, they do need to find that next guy. We've seen that with all of these great quarterbacks, whether it's Peyton Manning for Marvin Harrison to Reggie Wayne, Aaron Rodgers for Greg Jennings to Jordy Nelson to Devontae Adams. Go down the list. They've been able to kind of find guys to help them keep their star bright. Right now, Kansas City needs to do that. You thought this would be an opportunity for a guy like Sky Moore, maybe a guy like Kadarius Toney. 1 for 8 in terms of their targets. 1 catch, 8 targets, 1 million drops. It's not encouraging whatsoever for those guys who we all looked at to be maybe the 1-2 pass catchers in this offense. So yes, it's concerning going forward for this season, but they're going to get Travis Kelce back. I'm looking at it more of a macro level. Again, Travis Kelce is going to be 34 years old. He's no spring chicken. They need to have another pass catcher in this offense sooner rather than later.
Right. And then you look at Justin Watson going deep down the field. They try to get him the ball. That's how they got that pass interference.
Yep.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling, you brought up, was an MIA after the big play in the second half. So where are these guys going to step up and make these plays? Because it can't just be Kelce.
A lot of Giants fans sitting on home on this night saying, I know that Kadarius Toney. It was a night to forget for the wideout here for Kansas City. I do want to talk about some of the rookies and the impact that they had on this game because it felt like more than usual. We were saying new names. You had Branch with the pick 6, Gibbs featured in the attack, Rashee Rice sees the end zone, Jack Campbell flying around the ball. Getting these guys ready for a moment like this on a national stage, Emery, it's really got to sing praises on both sides of these coaching staffs to what they were able to do and how they were able to get these guys ready for this game.
And how you identify the guys that you need to help you out right away. So they went ahead and grabbed Brian Branch, who's a terrific slot corner. He was my #1 slot corner in the draft. He's out there making plays, had a pick 6. My #1 tailback was Jahmyr Gibbs. He goes out there and helps him on both sides of offense, catching the ball, running the football. My #1 flex tight end was Sam Laporta. So clearly I love what the Lions did in the draft. He's out there making not only plays in the passing game, but how well he was blocking for both David Montgomery as well as Jahmyr Gibbs. So identifying what you want. Jack Campbell was a great linebacker, got panned in the draft for taking a linebacker in the first round, but he's out there making impactful plays. You draft for your team and play your guys that you want to fit your scheme, and it executed well out there for Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, we could see what draft classes can do to a team. I mean, look no further than the New York Jets. You hit it right 1 year, and all of a sudden you're cooking with gas. And again, the jury's still out. 1 game has been played. Let's not overreact too much. But Detroit does seem to have a lot of promising rookies within this draft class. You mentioned Sam Laporta. I think he could be the #2 option in this passing game outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was really seemed to be a safety valve for Jared Goff. And we haven't even scratched the surface with Jahmyr Gibbs. You know, this was a big David Montgomery game, specifically in that second half. But if all of a sudden things start cooking with Jahmyr Gibbs, he is going to be an Alvin Kamara-like weapon within this offense, like they used to use him with New Orleans Saints when Dan Campbell was there. So to me, yes, encouraging with the offense, with the rookies of the Detroit Lions, but I still think that there's a little bit more there, especially with Jahmyr Gibbs.
If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. When in doubt, draft Bama. I think you can add Georgia to that way of thinking when we head into drafts, but Bama talent all over the field and rookies again in this spot. Tyler, I want to talk to you again about the offensive side of the ball here for Kansas City. Much was made on Twitter about maybe false starts throughout. It does get whistled late in this game and in a big moment. I don't want to ask you about that, but I do want to ask you about the guys up front. 2 new big pieces, including the tackle position for Kansas City. Didn't feel like Patrick Mahomes threw from a set platform throughout the night, maybe for the entirety of the night. What did you make of the performance of this new group up front?
Yeah, I mean, you know, whenever you're going up against Aiden Hutchinson, it's going to be a tough task, especially when they're moving him around, pushing him to the interior, pushing him off the edge. That's a tough assignment for an offensive line that's still getting to know one another. So, you know, as much as you say, okay, well, there's more to be improved along there, they're going to get easier opponents. They're not going to have an all-world type of player in Aiden Hutchinson going at them on a week-in and week-out basis and moved like a chess piece. But the biggest thing that I had in terms of having a gripe, not necessarily with the offensive line, but was with the play calling towards the end, with Blake Bell going in there in that 3rd down attempt. To me, that was the most egregious part of this game from a Kansas City standpoint, from a play calling standpoint with Andy Reid. That play is designed for Travis Kelce. You don't take the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hand in that type of a spot when it's not Travis Kelce, when it's Blake Bell in there. And so to me, that's the biggest thing that I thought was the downfall with Kansas City. Not necessarily the offensive line play, even though there was some shaky moments there for Patrick Mahomes, but ultimately that I felt was the key turning point in the game.
Dance with who you brought to the party. And for Kansas City, it was their passing game. But then you start to see that interior offensive line have some success against Detroit's defensive front without Isaiah Buggs on the interior. They were running the football rather well. Then they got cute, started to throw the football, wanted to drop back a little bit more. So I felt like they should have stayed with that. That offensive line was starting to wear down that defensive front that was trying to chase around and play safe against Patrick Mahomes all throughout the game, and you got away from it. You got too creative, got too cute, and it ended up hurting you. You saw Detroit lean into who they were as an identity, and that's what got them the win. So the offensive line, I thought, played well, and they just didn't get to stick with the run game, and that would have probably salted this game away for Kansas City.
For those keeping track at home, 1 down, 271 to go. Ball is back, and for that we give thanks, fellas. Appreciate you as always. And don't forget, the conversation always continues on the premier pod in the NFL. It's the Pick Six podcast. Our crew breaking it down each and every day. All the latest breaking storylines, and I'm sure some reaction to this one. A 1-point win in Week 1 by the Detroit Lions.